Welcome to SIM-PAC Live. I'm your host, Geoff Matthews, and today we're diving deep into one of the most exciting and impactful infrastructure projects in Australia. And we're joined by someone who knows this space like few others. I'm thrilled to be speaking with Daniel Lambert AM, Managing Director of Legacie, a company that's redefining how sustainable water infrastructure is delivered. Daniel's no stranger to SIM-PAC. He's been a regular speaker across multiple events. And in 2024, Legacie took home the SIM-PAC Live Award for their innovative and ethically grounded approach to large-scale water solutions. Daniel, great to see you.
Thanks, Geoff. Great to be here.
Now, before we look at your desalination project in the Pilbara, I wanted firstly to congratulate you on becoming a member of the Order of Australia. Now, I know this is in recognition of a long and distinguished career in a very unique subject, water. Can you take us through your career today, just briefly?
Yeah, thanks, Geoff. I've been fortunate to work in water for over 25 years, and that's spanned across 25 countries, doing humanitarian work, working in consulting, working with developers, constructors, water utilities. And throughout that time, it's been a wonderful experience because it's an industry where people are passionate about what they do and where there's an opportunity for us to really have a social and environmental impact throughout our work. And it's been, I'd like to say it hasn't been a job. It's been a hobby and a joy to be part of.
Awesome, and congratulations again. Now, take us in our minds to the Pilbara, into a desalination project which could potentially unlock billions worth of economic benefit for the region.
Yes, over the last 2.5 years, I've been working on a project called Ngarluma Water. We have been looking at the Pilbara region and identified there's a huge challenge around water supply. And fundamentally, the Pilbara has the largest iron ore deposits in Australia and some of the largest resources in the world. And not only is there a big challenge around supplying water for iron ore, but for lithium, there's a number of major decarbonisation projects planned. And also we have significant development up there and challenges around water and sanitation for First Nations communities. And when we look at those challenges, it's a really unique opportunity to help solve economic challenges around continuing to develop our resources sector, manufacturing sector, environmental opportunities around looking at alternative sources to groundwater supply, protect our aquifers, and opportunities around social outcomes, around partnering with First Nations communities to deliver economic benefit, but also clean water and sanitation for those communities in the region.
In your company, Legacie, you obviously greenfield sites. You've got the ability to start with a blank sheet of paper, and therefore, you if you're going to do that these days, you're always going to include local communities and First Nations peoples and try and build in win-wins for everyone. Can you tell us what's driving Legacie?
Yes. So Legacie is the company that we've started, which is really a partnership focused on water infrastructure development in industrial space. And the premise of that is there is a need in Australia and globally for sustainable industrial water supply that's delivered in a way that is beneficial to industry, beneficial to government in terms of private development and saving them capital in terms of developing their infrastructure for these communities and also for First Nations benefits and outcomes. And so Legacy has been created to help solve a gap in the market. And I look at it fundamentally, Geoff, where we have government that has a need to see industry advancing and First Nations outcomes and sustainable water supply. We have industry that needs water as a critical aspect to supply their mining operations, their decarbonisation project. And we have First Nations communities and other stakeholders that have a fundamental community and social need. And I almost describe it as us coming in as a developer to help be the glue between all these parties that have different drivers and outcomes, so we can help deliver a collective shared benefit for all.
And we're talking a lot of water in the Pilbara. We're talking 150 gigalitres?
That's right. And for the non-water people, that's the same size as the Victorian Desalination plant, which is the largest in the Southern Hemisphere. Another example of that scale. So the Greater Perth, the entire water supply for Greater Perth is about 300 gigalitres per annum. So we're talking about half of Perth's supply that is going to be supplied into the Pilbara to help drive this step change. Huge project, $7 billion in capital, the major offtake agreements with industry and potentially with the government as well to help bring that to life.
And tell us how the funding for this infrastructure project is going to work.
Yes. So to date, we've largely been funding it with by Legacie, the developer. We've had some fantastic support from BP, who's been heavily involved in a major project, the Australian Renewable Energy Hub. Suez is our exclusive water partner. And we've developed and completed our order of magnitude study, which has confirmed the project technically viable, delivering the environmental outcomes that we're looking for, and really commercially viable in terms of the price of water that we can deliver. The next stage is the detailed business case, and we're actively working with industry, investors, and government to develop a model to fund that stage. And post the detailed business case, we will then move to a model where the project's entirely privately funded. So we'll be working with superannuation funds, large investment banks to really secure debt and equity to deliver the project entirely off balance sheet. And that's quite unique really in the water sector, because it means the government won't have to invest capital into the project. Industry won't have to, like the miners and the decarbonisation projects and the other developers in the region won't have to invest capital. And those parties will be able to secure long-term sustainable water supply from a seawater source, which protects the groundwater and is at a more affordable price in terms of dollars per kilolitre than if they develop their own solutions.
Yes, and the superannuation funds love that long-term infrastructure playing good money, 50, 70 years projects.
Yep, it's very attractive, and there's a big appetite to invest into water. And I think it's unusual that a private developer is able to develop something of this scale to unlock that opportunity for them. There are major desal plants in the cities in Australia, for example, but they're under a very different model where they're developed by the government.
And how much capital are you looking for to build the desal plant and deliver the water to the people who are having these offtake agreements?
So $7 billion for the desalination plant, the pipe network to supply the key off-takers. We're deep in conversations and in the final stages of agreeing on MOUs with a number of industrial off-takers. We're engaging with the government. There's a fundamental need for water supply for townships such as Grasp and Port Hedland. There's also a need. Our pipe network passes very closely by about 10 First Nations communities, and it represents a perfect opportunity for us to work with Watercorp to bring potable water to those communities. And in many of those locations, there's not much water available, or there's groundwater sources which have varying degrees of quality and therefore suitability for drinking. So we're $7 million, but it's going to benefit industry, it's going to benefit First Nations communities, it's going to benefit the government, and in terms of township supply, and also strategic industrial areas. We're deeply in conversation with government at the moment as well. There's two large industrial areas that they're looking to develop in the Pilbara called Maitland and Badari. And for developers to come and invest into projects in those sites, water is a critical element. So it's fantastic to look at the benefits that a common user infrastructure scheme can give relative to individual projects that don't deliver the economies of scale or the economic impact.
So what are we talking about in economic impact? Has anyone done any work on that?
Yes, great question. And as part of our order of magnitude study, we engaged Marsden Jacobs to do an economic benefits assessment. Marsden Jacobs is one of the most highly regarded economic advisors in Australia, and they identified over $25 billion of benefit from this project to the region, which obviously is a huge number. And interestingly enough as well, when we compare it with other desalination projects in Australia, an order of magnitude higher. And that's because we're not just providing municipal supply, we're providing supply that will essentially, if you look at it from a car perspective, water is like the fuel that's going to unlock the resources sector. So the ability to continue to operate mines in the region, the ability to expand them, and the revenue that generates for Australia and for Western Australia is phenomenal. So billions of dollars of benefit will be unlocked by this project, which is so exciting for our country.
And what time frame were they looking at that $25 billion?
Looking at it over the course of the project. So
Course of the project.
The aim is to have first water in 2031, and then we are working with off-takers around 30-year take-or-pay arrangements.
Right, 30 years. And that's going to require, the desal plant's going to require a big chunk of, hopefully, renewable energy. That's what we're doing this for. How many megawatts are you looking for?
Great question. And as you mentioned, environmental impact's a huge part of what we're looking at, and that involves using seawater rather than groundwater for the desalination. But the energy for desalination processes is intensive. So we're looking at about 100 megawatts to source energy for that. We're engaging with multiple renewable energy players in the Pilbara. There's a lot of projects being developed up there, and our project's highly attractive given the load.
And when you put it in the process, when you're putting the water through membranes, you're not superheating it? You're not going through a steam reformation process?
No, we're not. Now, in terms of exactly how we run our desal process, we'll be working through that in the detailed business case process. But the desalination, as you know, is reasonably well proven, and we'll be looking at running it through a double pass to get it to a very high standard of water. So that's running through 2 membranes, and then supplying it to parties and those which will be more than suitable for industrial water. But some of the off-takers are potentially looking at potable supply, so would need a small amount of chlorination and fluoridation at their sites, but significantly cheaper than if they built their own scheme.
Okay. And were you looking to site the plant?
The plant's sited about halfway between Karratha and Port Hedland. So for those who've been up to the Balla and Pilbara region, the place is called Balla. It's on the coast. We're working with Pilbara Port Authority around how we would develop the project on that port site, and have the potential to develop a common user infrastructure port as well. And the benefit of it being situated where it is, obviously on the coast, so seawater access for the process, ability to build a common user infrastructure port for both the development of our project, but also to unlock port capacity for the region. And then a lot of demand both in Karratha, Port Hedland, the 2 strategic industrial areas I mentioned, and a number of major mines throughout that region. So ideally located in the middle of one of the largest development areas in Australia in terms of resources.
And the land, is it coming via a lease or a long-term right to occupy, or are you purchasing it?
Great question. in terms of Western Australia, most of the state is native title. So we're not purchasing any land. We'll be working with Pilbara Port Authority, Main Roads WA. We've got letters of intent that we're developing with them around having long-term lease arrangements for the port, where we'll have the desalination plant, Main Roads Western Australia, where we would work with them around leases along the road alignment throughout the region. And as you can imagine, those road alignments are ideally located because they run the townships of Karratha and Port Hedland. They run to close proximity to the strategic industrial areas, and they take us right to the major mine sites and off-takers that we're working with.
And are you going to run one major pipe where off-takers will then take off that pipe?
Yes, we are. And we'll have one going east and one going west. We'll have storages that, in terms of where the offtake is located, we'll have storages that can help in terms of balancing supply for their needs. But we'll be talking about 1,800 diameter pipe running east and west from the treatment plant, and they'll get progressively smaller as obviously we get further down the pipe network, but significant scale pipes.
I want to come back to being a greenfields developer and starting with a blank sheet of paper and potential wins for the local communities and the First Nations peoples. Now, I know you don't speak for the local communities and the First Nations peoples, but what's driving you? What's your hope that can come from this project and others like it?
One of the reasons we're really excited as Legacie about developing projects in the industrial water space is those win-win outcomes I talked about earlier. And I've talked a bit about the economic benefits for the state and for the resources sector, the environmental benefits for the region in terms of using renewable energy, not extracting groundwater and damaging the aquifers. And I touched on the social outcomes, but fundamentally, where most of in the regional areas of Australia, where a lot of the industrial demand is, it's often in a very remote location, and often in areas where there are First Nations communities that have challenges with access to clean water and sanitation systems. But also there's often economic challenges for those communities, and we have a view that as Legacie, when we develop a project, we want to partner wherever possible with First Nations communities to deliver win-win outcomes. And so we've been working with and engaging with Ngarluma Aboriginal Corporation for over 2.5 years. And from the beginning of the project, we've been seeking their input. They've been in project steering committees. They've been involved in heritage agreements and looking at different models where we can share the economic benefit. So those models include looking at free carry equity as an option. They look at looking at significant royalties as an option, and essentially we've co-developed solutions based on what they think would work well for them as a community. And the next steps really are for them to work through, well, what is the best outcome? And so we're really committed to looking at FPIC principles whenever we develop our project, and looking at the fact that this isn't just about, a project's not about just about delivering economic prosperity for a state or for a nation or for the mining sector. It's about delivering outcomes where we can help improve the benefits in terms of health outcomes and the benefits in terms of economic outcomes for communities that we're working with.
And do you think this is going to be an example for other states, other companies, and even nations to look at in terms of developing a water infrastructure project that benefits the wider community?
We think so, and we think the model is quite unique. I think the challenge often in industrial regions is there's not as well structured a water water sort of ecosystem in terms of when we look at the environment in an urban context versus an industrial context. In an urban context, often there's well-established utilities, well-established economic regulation, environmental, public health, funding. In regional areas, it's often challenging for a government-owned water utility to look at funding models for projects. And then for industry, often in the past they've worked independently and identified their own water supply source, so groundwater typically. With the scale of projects we're seeing now, and with the complexity of multiple mining companies in regions or multiple decarbonisation projects, renewables projects, it's not practical for mining companies to continue to do their own individual schemes, both from an environmental impact perspective, from a social impact perspective around how they engage with First Nations communities, and from an overall value for money perspective. And when we look at the price of water, when we have 150 gigalitre per annum scheme that's off balance sheet compared to individual parties developing individual solutions, the price of water is cheaper, the time to market is faster, and because of the way we've structured our approvals processes, and the fact they don't have to put capital on the table means that it's highly attractive to industry, it's highly attractive to government, and when we partner the right way with First Nations communities, it's highly attractive to them because they've got a developer that's coming along saying, how can we work together to deliver a step change outcome for you? So I think it's got huge application across Australia, and I think there's significant applications in a number of resource-intensive locations around the world.
Awesome. Good work. Now, timeframes. You mentioned 2031, but what are your timeframes from 2025 going forward? When can you expect to turn the first bits of soil?
Great question. And 2031 sounds like a long time away, doesn't it? But it's actually quite fast for a large desalination plant, and there's a number of steps that need to be undertaken over the next few months. We're working through securing the funding for the detailed business case with the intent of starting that in early 2026. The detailed business case will enable us to go to a greater level of design, higher class estimates in terms of CapEx and OpEx, firm up the financials and technical aspects of the project, firm up the environmental approvals, to then seek capital from investors to take us to FID. So the detailed business case will be complete in the first quarter of 2027. And then by mid-2027, we'll be looking to get to FID. And so the FID essentially is financial investment decision and financial close shortly after that. Once we've hit financial close, we will then look to rapidly roll out the detailed design and construction of the project. But the early work is likely to start in late 2027, early 2028 to enable the construction to take place at pace, and we'll then work through the construction period, and then there's a significant commissioning process that happens for a desal plant to get to that first water in 2031.
Yeah. Coming back just for a second to Legacie's style and blueprint of working, do you think that helped you get as far as you've got, especially with approvals and things? Do you think you're going to go further by taking that approach from the start?
Yes. Without collaboration, there's no way we would be anywhere near where we are. I mean, in fact, there's no way this project would be able to come to life. So from the very beginning, as I mentioned, we've been heavily in engagement and collaboration with Ngarluma, the Ngarluma people. We've been heavily engaged with the state government and the federal government. both around ensuring their support, ensuring it aligns with their strategies as a state and as a nation, identifying with them potential funding sources for the business case. And then we've also been engaging heavily with government, with off-takers, and investors. And so there's so many pieces to the puzzle of developing a project like this. And without partners such as Suez, who's been supporting us very early on the project as our exclusive water partner, Taquana as our technical advisor throughout the first few stages, BP investing early in the project, and the government and Ngarluma and others that I've mentioned, we wouldn't be able to bring this project to life. So it's fascinating developing a project like this, and it's one where you need that deep collaboration to identify the optimal way of doing it and make sure that everyone is aligned as you work through the process.
And how have you found how's the project been received by some of these people and these partners you've been approaching when you go to somebody like BP and say, look, this is what we want to do? How have you found that reception?
I think there's a lot of excitement there's a lot of excitement because the need for water in the Pilbara is significant, and individually, every resources company up in that part of the world is grappling with how they would solve the solution themselves, or is there another way to do it? I think there's been positive feedback and support from Water Corporation and from DEED, the government department looking after the strategic industrial areas. I think early on, I think there are questions of how will the model work? Hasn't been done before. Where are you going to get the funding from? Will off-takers rely on a third-party supply when traditionally miners have used their own suppliers? So there's been a whole lot of questions we've had to answer. There's a whole lot of trust that we've had to build and credibility. And you need to go through as we go through each stage of the project, more and more confidence is built. So the order of magnitude study was a huge step for us because it helped provide independent verification of a lot of the aspects of the model which we were talking to stakeholders about.
Yeah, no, well done. And I'll make a little plug here that you won a 2024 SIM-PAC Live Sustainability Award for collaboration for what you were doing. So that planning that you were doing was recognised in that. And yeah,
and I think that's done. A credit. Thanks, Geoff. And I suppose that's a credit to SIM-PAC as well in that SIM-PAC identified early that this was a very different approach and it had real potential. And we're now sitting in a room 12 months later and talking about the fact that that identifying that collaborative approach and the benefits of that collaboration is now being realised.
Yes. Last question. 10 years from now, what's success look like to you if this project it goes ahead as you foresee it?
Yes, it's an interesting question, Geoff. And as I mentioned earlier, when we're working in the water sector, many of us that are in this space do it because we want to see the benefit to people, the environment, the economy. And for me personally, this is a once in a lifetime project. I've never seen anything this unique where we can deliver the economic scale to a region in terms of the social outcomes. I talked about those 10 First Nations communities. I've talked about our desire to have a really powerful economic partnership with the Ngarluma people. We've talked about the environmental impacts around not using groundwater, using renewable energy, and the economic benefit for the state, the resources sector. But really, obviously, we've called ourselves Legacie for a reason. And yes, our name ends in an IE rather than a Y, but that's actually an ancient Latin word, which is a group of people on a mission. And really, myself and my two partners, Clayton and Michael, we jump out of bed in the morning because we're delivering a once in a lifetime project that in a model that's never been done in the water space in a way that will deliver transformation. So in 10 years' time, I'm hopeful that not only will this project transform the Pilbara, but it will provide a model for us to transform other regional areas around Australia and the globe to deliver sustainable water for resources, First Nations, and for government. And so I couldn't be more excited about the potential. It's been a huge journey to get here, but we're incredibly privileged to be part of it.
Fantastic. And it's fantastic to see you still got that excitement in you. You're not jaded from 2 years of working on a business plan.
Jaded at times, but not too jaded. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the show, Daniel. That's all the questions I had for you. If anybody's got any questions for Daniel, can you please put them into the live chat below on YouTube? And we'll be online for about the next 20 minutes to answer them. Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, Geoff.